I'm not the woman you used to know. I'm a woman who knows how to rise, and I've been denying it for long enough. But it's time for me to start walking in the fullness of who God has called me to be. God says, what I have for you is so much greater than fixing that one little thing in your past. That when I get finished with the women who registered for this conference, that I'm going to show them that they always had wings. They just didn't know how to spread them. I'm going to show them that they always had enough wind to carry them over obstacles. They just didn't believe that they could keep up. I'm going to show them who I've always called them to be, this woman, this woman.
And where you can always just be really comfortable, I think sometimes, well, I kind of enjoy making people squirm in their seats a little bit. You know, it's kind of, you can kind of tell when you're saying something that people would really rather not hear. But you know, it's the stuff that we would rather not hear that we need to hear. They clap for the stuff they already know and agree with. When they're quiet, come on, when they're quiet, you're saying something that's kind of like, uh-oh, am I understanding this right? You know, a lot of times when God begins to deal with us about something that is going to be a little bit uncomfortable for us, we tell God, oh no, not that, I'm not ready for that yet.
110-mile-per-hour winds swept through and ripped through one town in particular that was just when they were looking for some peace, the storm came. And the aftermath of Ike was devastating. There was almost nothing left except fragments of what once was. But the only thing that gave a slight nod to the history, the only landmark that gave evidence that there was once a community that existed the day before, is that of the 200 houses that had been there, only one remained. 199 of them had been wiped out by the storm, but there was one that was still standing. And oh, I wish I had time, because if I had time tonight, I would just ask the question, what is it about this house that kept it standing when the storm wiped everything else out? Because the truth is, if I had time, I'd tell you about the owners who had been through previous storms. So they made the wise, proactive decision to retrofit their house so that it would be prepared for future storms. So we could spend some time right there if we had time. Because the truth is, there's a whole lot of people that started out on the journey with us, but now, in these years we're in right now, we look around us and realize that everybody ain't building houses that are still standing. That the truth is, when we started out and made a commitment maybe to follow Christ, or made a commitment to see our marriage through to the end, or that endeavor that the Lord had entrusted to us, or that ministry that He asked us to start, everybody had so much fervor at the beginning of the building project. But then the storm came.
And I don't want young women, young girls to get ahead of themselves to think that they have to fix it all now. In order to break these cycles of negativity, you got to get up every day and do the work right before you. That means getting your education when the opportunity presents itself, and then focusing on that, doing the work, doing your homework, getting to the next stage in life. Because if you take those small steps over time, you build up a lifetime of another story for yourself.
And if you couldn't grow with me, then you can't go with me, because I'm not going to deny that I just touched the hem of His garments. I'm not going to deny that I think I deserve better than this. I'm not going to deny that I want to go after it. I'm not going to deny that I have wings any longer. I'm not going to deny it for you to be comfortable with your own mediocrity. I have to step into who God has called me to be, because there's something about identifying with the fact that you have called on a name that is greater than yours, that should give you the kind of power that should make demons tremble when you walk into a room.
In Ecclesiastes 11:4, it says, "He who observes the wind will not sow, and he who regards the clouds will not reap." And really what that is basically saying is, when God asks you to do something, if you won't do it unless all of your circumstances are perfect, then you'll never end up sowing, and if you don't sow, you'll never end up reaping. So we need to get the understanding that God purposely puts us in positions very often in life where we won't like it, and it's not convenient, and it's not comfortable, and even though we do not understand the purpose, there is a purpose for what God is doing.
Giving up is the birth of regret. The reality of life is that we will all hear more no's than we hear yeses. And then she says, I think you could be the next Miss USA. And I stare at her in pure disgust and said, pageants? I compete in my first pageant, and I lose. I go back the second year, compete in the state pageant. I lose. Go back the third year, compete in the state pageant, and lose. Go back the fourth year, compete in the same pageant, and lose. I go back the fifth year, y'all. Compete in the state pageant and lose. But guess what? I go back the sixth year. Guess what happens? I lose. I called her on the phone and said, you told me I could be the next Miss USA. And she says, Deshauna, keep working, don't quit, keep going back. And in June of 2015, she passes away from leukemia. 6 months later, in December 2015, I win Miss District of Columbia, USA. And 6 months after that, in June of 2016, I become the first soldier to win Miss USA.
Where are the people who will remain, who will stay, who will plant their feet firmly and choose faithfulness? And can I tell you, the older and older I get, y'all, the less impressed I am with the famous. They may not be famous, but they've remained. They may not be rich, but they've remained. They may not be applauded, but they've remained. They may not have best-selling books or millions of followers on Instagram, but they ain't concerned about that. They try to be steadfast, unmovable, and always abounding in the work of the Lord. We need some people who are just faithful. Not comparing themselves with somebody else's house, not wondering whether or not their house looks good compared to the other people's house around them. No, this is the house the Lord has entrusted to me. And so I'm going to make sure this foundation is firm. And I'm going to make sure that the scaffolding on this house is solid. And I'm going to make sure that I have a house that is still standing. So I came to encourage you to stay.
Time for me to start walking in the fullness of my calling and my destiny, and to stop apologizing for wanting more.
No one can do that for you. You have to look over your life, and we as women sometimes feel like we have to have done everything right before we can take credit for the things that we have done. But there is power in what we do every day. And I have to remind myself of that every single moment. But now that I'm older, I can now look back and say, yeah, I am worthy. I have value. But it's not because I'm sitting here. I had that value when I was 3, when I was 5, when I was 7, when I was 12. And for the young girls out there, you have it now. You just have to take the time to realize it and be patient with yourself as you do it, because the process takes a lifetime.
And I know maybe you've only known me as a teen mom, but God just called me into ministry. And so you're going to have to expand your definition of me to fit with who God has called me to be. Some of you are going to have to go back to your homes and reintroduce yourself. Allow me to introduce myself. My name is the anointed and appointed vessel of God. Allow me to reintroduce myself. I've been changed and transformed and set free. Allow me to reintroduce myself. For some reason, this woman, she stood out to Jesus. He was in the crowd and there were so many people touching him, but for some reason, the way she touched him, like she needed something from him. I think our worship is most beautiful when we're broken, because we need something from him. Don't ever become so successful that you stop needing something from Jesus.